Hey, Shalom, guys. Welcome to another episode of me going over the Ten Commandments. Last episode, we did the introduction of what to basically expect, from this series. So today, we're going to be going over the first commandment that we see out of the 10. So the first one can be found in Exodus chapter 20, verse 2, which says, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. Now, obviously, there are a lot more commandments in the Torah than just these 10. According to the traditional Talmudic reckoning, there are 613 commandments in the Torah. And it depends on how you count them. Now, at any rate, there are certainly more than the 10. So why do we say 10 singled out? Now, the 10 commandments are like an ethical core from which the rest of the commandments radiate from. Now, in some ways, they summarize the rest of the commandments. In other ways, they form the foundation for the rest of the commandments. It is not as if these are the only important commandments, but the rest are just plainly optional. Now, in the days of the apostles, the Ten Commandments were recited as part of the morning prayers. Now, according to the Talmud, this practice changed when certain sectations began to teach that the Ten Commandments were the only commandments still valid. Now, in order to discourage this misunderstanding from spreading, the sages elected to remove the recitation of the Ten Commandments from the morning prayers. The Ten Commandments were recited just before the morning Shema, which created a natural fusion between the commandments and the words of Deuteronomy 6, 6 to 7, which says, These words which I commanding you today shall be in your heart, and you shall teach them diligently. Now, for that, specifically look at the Babylonian Talmud, Berachot 12a. Now, the sectarians who argue that the only 10 commandments were still valid may have been early Christians. Now, in Christianity today, it is common to hear people defend the Ten Commandments as binding and eternal laws, but in the next breath claim that the rest of the commandments of the Torah need no longer to be practiced. The Ten Commandments were never meant to be regarded as a shorter, easier version of the Torah, nor is there any indication in the Bible that the Ten Commandments endure while the rest of the laws are just done away with. The Ten Commandments are better understood as the essence of the entire revelation of the Torah. They are the nucleus of a covenant treaty similar to other suzerainty covenants of the ancient Near East. Now, a suzerain is a nation or a political entity that controls a dependent nation's international affairs, but allows it to retain sovereignty over many of the internal affairs. Now, some aspects of ancient Near Eastern suzerainities, treaties are usually for understanding the Torah and the covenantal relationship between God and Israel. Now, by means of a suzerain covenant, a great king would form a political alliance with a vassal nation. The covenant document between them typically began with a preamble identifying the covenant suzerain and a belief historical prologue, which recounted the benefits bestowed upon the vassal by the suzerain. Now, Exodus chapter 20, verse 2, the first of the Ten Commandments, follows this pattern. So the preamble would be, I am the Lord your God. Then the historical prologue would be, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. Now, according to the Jewish reckoning, Exodus chapter 20, verse 2 is the first commandment. When understood as the preamble as a suzerain treaty, this commandment has covenant implications. Not only is it a commandment to acknowledge that God exists, it is a covenant to acknowledge that he is your God and you are his vassal. Therefore, the first commandment establishes the authority on which the subsequent commandment rests. This can be compared to a CEO who is visiting a small branch in the office. The employees did not recognize the stranger. He walked into the office and gave them assignments, but no one listened until he said, I am the CEO, your boss, who authorizes you to receive a paycheck. When the employees understood who he was, they immediately accepted his orders. Now, the rest of the Ten Commandments from the baseline stipulations of the treaty. This is why we later write on 2 stone tablets, which are referred to as the testimony. For examples of this, see Exodus chapter 25, verse 15. Now, in the ancient Near East, suzerain covenants were written out and deposited in a safe place. The two tablets are duplicate copies of that treaty. Just as a modern contract is always written in duplicate so that each party can retain a copy, the Ten Commandments were written on two tablets, one representing God's copy and the other representing Israel's copy. Therefore, the Ten Commandments should be understood as a legal core for the entire covenant of Torah, not the sum total of it. And that is the first commandment that we have right there. Join us as we go over the next episode of the second commandment, and I hope to see you there. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Shalom.